What's up, fellow RC addicts, enthusiasts, and just anybody interested in the RC hobby? Bear down here with you. We've got the Rustler 4x4 here, the beater Rustlers I like to call it. So today we're just going to be going over removing the 3S system that was in the vehicle, and then we'll be installing this Castle 4S capable Copperhead. It's a limited edition. So we'll go ahead when we're done with this. I'll show you a little cool thing that it does. It's kind of funny, but I was planning on doing a video of the soldering, but I thought I was recording and it turns out I wasn't. So this plug is not going to be staying on there that long. This is only a 3S capable plug, and Traxxas doesn't make a 4S battery that'll fit in the stock Rustler chassis. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a battery manufacturer that has a 4S pack that'll fit in here. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be switching this plug over to a XT90 or an IC5. So depending on which batteries I can find, I'm going to end up replacing the plug on there. So we're just going to kind of go over removing this system. We're going to be putting the 4S system in, and then this system is going to be going into my son's SMT10. First thing we're going to want to do is take off the receiver box and start unplugging stuff. So just have a little bit of dielectric grease on there. Helps keep the waterproofing, but it also kind of keeps some dirt there, so you just kind of got to be careful of where you're get the grease at. Alright, so we flipped the receiver cover off. You can see in there, it kind of looks like there's some moisture in there, but that's not. That's just some of the dielectric grease. So obviously we need to go in here and disconnect the fan, well, both fans, but everything's going to be disconnected from here because we don't have any kind of telemetry or anything or vehicle control. So channel 2 is always burn, so your motor and power. Channel 1 is turn. So it's always an easy way to remember it. If you're plugging in your ESC or your servo, just always kind of remember that 1 to turn, 2 to burn. It's just an easy way to remember which should be plugged into which channel. So since we're going to have all this out, I haven't had the wires completely out since I got it. We'll probably give the receiver box a nice little clean. Alright, so we've got it cleaned up a little bit. We'll go ahead and get that taken care of when we got more of the stuff out of here. But in case anybody's wondering why I call it the beater Rustler 4x4, I mean, all my other vehicles I take much better care of them. This was kind of like my first real hobby grade car. It's kind of got a hodgepodge of different stuff on there. You know, it's just got some cheap big bore shocks on it. You know, I mean, look at my fans just zip tied on because I broke it off and Hobby Shop didn't have any available. I mean, I just send this thing to the moon. There's really no limit to the abuse I'll put this thing through. So that's kind of why I call it the beater Rustler 4x4. I mean, it's still maintained and greased and all that, but she gets beat up a little bit more than some of the other cars. So I did go through and zip tie most of this stuff together. See the Castle ESC, the short course ESC that came in this was a sensorless ESC, but a sensored motor, so I never had the functionality. And then the switch on it died, and I ended up just wiring it together. So I just have to make sure that my transmitter is turned on whenever I actually plug a battery in, because plugging the battery in is what turns it on. There we go, we've got ESC out, and now this is the doing of a Hobby Shop. It is not the Hobby Shop that I currently use. I actually switched from them. This wasn't the only mishap I had, but they cut the wires. They put this TRX plug on. I've had nothing but problems with it. So I'm probably going to be taking this off and soldering some new leads on before I put it in my son's truck as well. We're going to go through, we're going to clean all this out real well. Get the wire holder off. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep this motor fan on this can or if I'm going to be putting it on the new can yet, so I don't know. I guess I'm going to have to figure out what the temps are running like. This up a little bit, actually all the way, because we're taking this whole thing off. We have another screw. It's the bottom, but this screw you don't have to undo all the way. So once this guy's out, just undo that screw a little bit. Go ahead and slide that out. I'm going to take the motor plate off. Pretty sure this pinion will slide through the motor plate, but if you had anything much bigger than this, you'd end up wanting to take the pinion off first. So then we'll end up cleaning this off real nice and good so we can get a nice smooth mount on that too. We'll put that aside. We're putting the 13 on the 4S ESC just to see what kind of speeds we get on the same size pinion, but I don't know. I'm not sure the pinions and gearings and all that for my son's car, so I'm gonna have to figure that out first. So then I did have this plugged in. This is the censored wires. So it was plugged in, so I had something keeping debris and water from getting in there, and then I put some dielectric grease, and then I taped the end so it helped keep debris out of there. So just as I said with the motor plate, the motor itself, we'll end up cleaning this off, making sure this is perfectly clean, we don't have any grit and grime in there. But I'm going to go ahead and do some cleaning off screen, and I will see you guys, or off camera I should say, and I'll see you guys in a minute. And we are back. As you can see, everything's relatively clean. So we already have a pretty general idea of where the ESC is going to be going. Before we actually mount that, kind of just want to get the motor itself into position. First thing we're going to want to do is remount the motor plate screws. It's actually a good idea to put some thread lock in there. If you've watched any of my other videos where we're putting metal on metal, you'll know that anytime you're doing metal on metal connection, you're going to want to go ahead and throw some Loctite on that. So we made sure the plate was nice and clean, and the motor itself is nice and clean. I'm not going and locking that plate down yet. I'm just kind of getting it started, both screws. Also forgot to mention that since we did wash down the bodies, I went ahead and sprayed some WD-40 on any of the screws that are sitting on a flat plane, so hopefully keep the water from going in. But go ahead and get these screws tightened down on the motor plate. Go ahead and find that flat spot on the motor shaft. So we're going to be reusing the 13 tooth pinion just to kind of see where we're at as far as speed. So I'm just going to kind of, not quite exactly sure where this is going to be sitting on the shaft, so we'll just kind of tighten it down a little bit, keep it from moving, and we'll go ahead and get it set once we get the motor mount on. So we just slide that plate right over that screw. Go ahead and put that top screw back in. So we're not going to worry about getting that set yet. We're just kind of getting positioning and everything laid out. So here is kind of a size comparison. So it's a little longer. Alright, so I think my best option is going to be, it doesn't sit completely flush, and then there's a little area here. I'm not sure what initially went there, but I can get tape to go around this edge, this edge, this edge, and this edge up to here. So we're pretty much going to be wrapping all the way around, except for right here. I'm just trying to get it to stick. So we'll go ahead and get that done. Make sure you get one of your sharp X-Acto knives or hobby knives when you're using this stuff. So since it's only going to be on the edges, I'm going to mount it halfway on. Cut that off. So we've got that half sticking out, so we're just going to go ahead and I'm just going to stick that other side right on this edge. I also forgot to mention before I put that down there, I did give this a nice rubbing with rubbing alcohol to help it stick to that. Since we're just dealing with such fine edges on the chassis itself, I'm just going to go ahead and use a Q-tip. I'm just going to kind of rub down the surfaces we're planning on sticking to. It dries rather quickly as long as you're using the 91%. We're going to make sure we keep nothing's pulling up. Get it started. You want to try to keep away from touching the tape itself as much as possible. So I don't want to push down straight on the fan, so I'm kind of making sure I'm grabbing the actual ESC itself and pushing down so I don't break the fan. There we go. This silicone seal that helps make the receiver box waterproof. That's got to go on before anything gets run through the top of the box. Alright, so before we get too far now, we're going to want to go ahead, and this is when we're going to want to adjust the spur, the mesh. Something I probably should have done before we did put the motor in is plugging in the sensor wire. Luckily I left enough room to get in there. There we go, yay! So obviously we're going to go through, I'm going to zip tie all this stuff and make it nice and neat. So I'm going to have a switch again too, so we're going to go ahead and I'm going to take a little piece of the Gorilla Tape. We'll probably end up taping all this together, and then I'll end up just taping it right to the side of the chassis. But we'll do that last. Alright, we'll get these wires out of the way. So it's marked here, if you can see that. We got A, B, C, and on the ESC we have A, B, C. Take A, obviously plug it into A. B obviously goes to B, and if you can't guess what comes next, I don't know if any video I make or anybody else does is actually going to help you. Go ahead and put in the ESC wire, then we have the servo wire, and then we'll go ahead to the ESC fan wire. Another thing to do is, I'm going to admit it, I used to have problems with plugging the wire in the wrong direction, putting these plugs in. Good way to remember is usually most of them have a white wire. The white wire is always going to face in towards your receiver. So this is the ESC, which means power. So 2, 1 to turn, 2 to burn. And then the fan can just go either if you have an auxiliary or if you have an extra channel. So we're just going to go ahead and put this fan into channel 3. So we just kind of you don't want to have a big old rat's nest, so I just kind of like to roll them up like that, like you would cord. You don't want it getting pinched or kinked or anything, but you still want it to fit in there. So we're going to go ahead, we got to make sure that silicone seal stays seated. If it was my crawler or something like that, or if it was coming up to winter time and I'm driving around in the snow, I would go ahead and put a thin little layer of some marine grease around the edge of the seal right here, but I'm not going to worry about that now. I'm just going to put a little bit of the dielectric grease right on the wire cover. Just got to make sure we got wires sticking in there. As always, when there's more than one screw holding something down, you don't want to cinch it down all the way. So we're just getting it started to make sure we're holding that box down so we know we're not pinching that seal or anything. Go ahead and tighten it down. Now it should actually go to tight, but once you get to that, you obviously don't want to keep on going because you're going to strip it out. But it's also one of those things where you, some of the screws, it will keep on spinning and they don't cinch tight. If we still have extra wire that we don't want, we're able to kind of just flip this around a little, slide more in. You don't want it to be super duper tight, but you also don't want to have a bunch of hanging out. So I plan on zip tying it down with this and all 3 of these behind that, so I'm going to leave a little bit of slack. So I kind of like where that is right there. You can kind of see the different sizes. Oops. There we go. You can see the different size spaces. Like there's a little black. Let's see if you can see this here. There's little black nubs in between each one, and that's kind of like the single one holds the antenna. You got 3. Usually one's for the ES. They're the ones that are wide enough for 3 wires. Usually that's like the ESC. And the servo, and then you'll have another one, and that's usually for like your fan, or multiple fans will fit in there. So we'll go ahead right there, and that's good to go right now. So I'll go ahead and take some of the dielectric grease, just a little bit, right where this foam is. A little bit much. Like I said, if you do put too much on, you do want to take it off, because if it goes flying everywhere and spreading down all over the place, you're going to end up, it's just going to trap dirt everywhere, and you really just want to keep it here to keep water from getting through. It just helps with the waterproofing, or I guess I should really say water resisting. Cap, and see underneath the cap it has the foam as well, so you have the 2 layers of foam, the dielectric grease, and once you have all that, it's pretty sealed. Alright, so we'll go ahead and put the spur and pinion cover on real quick. Alright, so while you're doing this too, if you're going to get so frustrated, I recommend some kind of needle nose pliers, even one with a curve I find to be extremely helpful. And it really helps with frustration, trying to get things zip tied and nice and neat. I am not going to put a zip tie onto the wire for the actual antenna. Kind of want it coming together right behind the antenna straw, just like that. I know I don't make my cars perfectly nice and tidy. Other people are probably going to see it and be like, oh, that guy's car is so sloppy and messy, but man, I see some people's cars with wires laying everywhere, and I'm just like, holy cow, I'd be scared to drive that thing. So then this wire, I think we're going to zip tie this here. We're going to kind of take this and loop it over itself. We're going to zip tie that right there. When I do loops like that, I like to do 2 zip ties on it. I'll go ahead and show you guys here in a second, just so that loop doesn't tighten down on itself as easily. So I'll go ahead and kind of spread that loop out, and I'll try to put one on one side. So I'm not going to tighten this down all the way yet, I'm just going to get it started. We know we got it over there. And then I'll take this zip tie on this side with the loop. So if you can see, it kind of just helps keep it, the loop kind of spread out a little bit so it doesn't pinch down on itself, if that makes sense. So go ahead and tighten that down. Oh man, another thing I wanted to mention too about the Castle ESCs is, I don't know if it's just a special edition because I didn't have it with my last one, but if you buy, I don't know if it's just a combo kit or what, they give you a coupon code, and you can either get this, the Field Link tuning card for, I believe it's $10, but a buddy of mine already gave me the tuning card, so I ended up getting the Castle Link USB adapter for free. I gave him my email or my address, put the code in that came with this combo kit, and they shipped it to me for free. I didn't even have to give them any credit card information or anything, so we'll be able to mess with the motor a little bit more when that comes in. Alright, so I just cleaned the switch off with rubbing alcohol. Go ahead and stick some of the double-sided Gorilla Tape on the switch itself. I didn't want to touch the tape too much, so I didn't trim it until after it was on the switch, so I'm going to have to be extremely careful not to cut the wire. Make sure we're holding it in place. Now, I know most of you probably know this, but for those of you that are kind of newer to doing this stuff, when you're cutting through this, instead of just starting at the end of the tape, if you're cutting it, it's always easier to kind of stick it in the middle and pull out so it keeps the tension and you're not just pushing and it's not going to move it around as much on you. It just makes life a whole lot easier. So we'll go ahead and stick that down really hard. Try to get a corner up and loose. If we can. There we go. Peel that double-sided tape. Squeeze it as hard as we can there. So I think I'm actually going to cut this zip tie so we don't have to have extras. So you just got to make sure. Just going to destroy this one. Just got to make sure that you're not cutting through your wires at all, obviously. Even just putting a little nick through the insulation on the outside of the wire, and it could cause big problems. So you just gotta be careful with that. So this time we're gonna just go in between the power wires. Bring this up here. There we go. Alright, so that's really all there is to it. I mean, we can plug in a battery right now, and actually that's what I'm going to do for you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and get a 3S battery. I don't have any 4S's, like I said earlier, that'll fit in there. I'd love to try that out. But we'll go ahead, we'll put that 3S in here. I'm going to charge it up real quick, and I'll see you guys outside for a little surprise. See you in a minute. Alright, so plug that in before we turn on the ESC. Hold throttle down. Every time I turn that on now. I'm sure that'll get annoying eventually, but I love it right now.